and welcome to GameStack. We're talking about vehicular combat games.
And a little bit of racing, so you're going to like that aspect of it, but...
Mostly racing, actually. I think a lot of them have, so...
It does, but there's a few that are just strictly combat ones, and you'll see those, but don't look for games like Mario Kart. We've already talked about kart racing with combat in it in another episode. This is just strictly vehicular.
Exactly, and with all that said, let's get to it. What better way to start off a car combat episode than with combat cars on the Genesis from Accolade? This is a top-down racer similar to the Micro Machines game, only not as good. It plays like you'd expect. You race around the track and then you can fire your special weapon, which you get 3 of at the beginning of each lap. The handling is pretty bad in this game no matter which character you play as. Even tapping the brakes slows you down much more than I'd like. Between each race you can upgrade your car, but the prices are pretty damn steep. And if you come in less than 3rd place, F you, game over, no continues. But at least the music is kind of good. Also, there's a 2-player mode that's squished and interlaced exactly like Sonic 2's 2-player mode, so that's interesting. I mean, at least it is to me. There's not a whole lot of 16-bit games that actually interlace. And I'm not saying interlacing is great or anything, it's just interesting. Otherwise, I don't really enjoy this game very much and I'd rather play something else. So let's check out Full Auto 2 Battle Lines on the PlayStation 3. I saw this one for sale at a game store a year ago for like $5 and I figured, why the hell not? This one seems to take place in the very near future. And I have no idea what makes me say that, but it seems like it. You initially don't know anything, however, bits of the story get filled in here and there. But come on, who cares about that? Because you're here to shoot other cars down. There are a few different types of events that happen here. In one such event, you're just driving around a very long or lapped track just trying to get enough kills in to meet your murder quota. And of course, you've got to win the race as well. But you can't lose if you kill everyone else. Well, actually, you can. Another event is arena style where you're free to go wherever you want in a relatively small area. Your mission here is to destroy a prerequisite amount of enemy vehicles. Before each event, you choose your vehicle. These are all fake, of course, but they almost look like certain models of real cars. You also get to decide what kind of armaments you want attached. A lot of the environment is destructible. The tracks feature lots of shortcuts, which reminds me of the Burnout series. In addition to that, the camera zooms in on the wrecks that you cause, which makes it seem even more like Burnout. Oh yeah, and then there's the boost feature, which is just like, well, yeah, you guessed it. It also has that rewind feature, which has become popular in a lot of racing titles. This can let you avoid small mistakes and even crashes. Because of the boost and the rewind, your fingers are going to be busy with all of the shoulder buttons. And it can be kind of confusing since the boost is assigned to the same shoulder as the braking and rewind over by the acceleration. I assume you can change this, but I've never messed with it. The action is pretty intense and sometimes it's hard to take in everything that's going on, but come on, that's part of the fun. The graphics display in full 1080p, which is pretty rare to see on the PS3. However, the frame rate is less than ideal, coming in under 30 most of the time. The environments are pretty detailed, and there are a decent amount of different areas to battle in. These can range from the mostly dull browns and grays that plagued that generation of gaming to some vibrant and colorful canyons. The sound is pretty well done, and the music fits, but it's completely unmemorable. This game is fun for sure, but honestly, only in small doses. You'll find yourself becoming fatigued of playing this one after an hour or so. But hey, if you can limit yourself, this one's a good one to come back to once every few days.
The Twisted Metal series of car combat games debuted in 1995 on the original PlayStation. The storyline for the series is simple. A man named Calypso holds a contest every year. Your job is to win that contest by destroying all other competitors in a closed arena-style setting, and if you do, Calypso will grant you any wish that you desire. The first 2 games in the series were developed by Singletrack. At the time, I played a lot of the first game as it was something new and refreshing. It was an experience like I'd never played before. The controls are pretty good considering there isn't any analog support. Going back and playing it now really makes you appreciate a good analog stick. The graphics have a lot of warping here when you get close, more so than most PlayStation games of the time. The next 2 games were developed by 989 Studios. Some people complain that they weren't as good as single-track developed games, but after playing Twisted Metal 3 here, I really don't feel much of a difference. I mean, the controls are the same, and the levels and weapons all feel in line with what we've played before. The multiplayer is still very fun, and even though I only have one friend, you can play with up to 4 players. Still, 2-player action with some bots can be really entertaining. The graphics aren't amazing, but they still hold up pretty decent for a game from this era. The soundtrack is hit and miss with licensed music from known artists. I mean, how many games can the song Dragula be in? Incognito Entertainment took over the series after that and did something a little unexpected and released Twisted Metal Small Brawl for the PlayStation. Apparently, this one was designed to get younger kids into the series since the game isn't as dark as previous entries. The story still revolves around a young Calypso and his contest. Since it involves kids who are too young to drive real cars, he makes his tournament where they drive RC cars. As you'd expect, the game controls the same, but the arenas revolve around things that you might see in everyday life, like a playground which has a sandbox and swing set and things like that. Or there's a putt-putt golf course filled with putt-putt perils like a volcano. This wasn't a very popular game, but I was able to get some fun out of it even if it was short-lived. Luckily, I only paid $4 for it. Jumping ahead, we get a game simply called Twisted Metal on the PlayStation 3. This was a reboot of the series that came out in 2012. David Jaffe, who's the original creator of the Twisted Metal series, was back in the driver's seat for this title. His company, Eat, Sleep, Play, handled this one and they did a great job. The main focus, as always, is multiplayer. The sad thing is that you need an online pass to be able to play online, which is fine since the code is on the back of the manual when you buy the game. But for people like me who bought this game used, would have to buy a pass to play online. Frankly, I'm not about to do that, so I have to stick with the offline features. Yeah, I'm a little pissed off because I would have liked to experience playing online with other people out there. Oh well, I guess I'll have to get my only friend to play with me again via split screen. And in actuality, it's really fun sitting in the same room with a buddy having a beer or 4 or 5 and playing the game. The banter between us brought back memories of when we'd play the first game together, and it was great fun. There's a single player mode where you follow a storyline, and yes, it's the same one with Calypso. The stories are really dark, and watching the cutscene movies makes me a little queasy. But as far as gameplay goes, it's Twisted Metal on the PS3. This means huge levels that are fairly detailed and very destructible. It's really fun just to drive around and look at everything before you go all out with the other cars. And just like previous games, the battles are fast and furious, and given the size of the levels, you never feel too far away from your enemies. The overall tone of the game is dark, and so are the levels that you play on. There's one idea here that I particularly like. After you defeat an enemy, they run from the wreckage of their vehicle in flames. If you run over their burning body, you get a little health boost besides putting your enemy out of his misery. I like that. The music again has real bands and lots of songs that you'll recognize that fit with all the destruction. If you're in the mood for some good car combat action, you can't go wrong with this franchise. If you're an Xbox fanboy, you've missed out on some great games. What's your favorite game in the series?
Special weapon back online.
This is Vigilante 8 on the original PlayStation from Activision. It's also available on the N64 and the Game Boy Color. No, it's not the 8th game in the Vigilante franchise that appeared on the Master System in the TurboGrafx-16, unfortunately. This one is an arena car combat game very similar to Twisted Metal. Basically, you and other vehicles are battling it out in several different places around the USA. Everyone is attacking everyone else, and your goal is to be the last one left alive. I mean, isn't that what vigilantism and street justice is all about? Not really, but whatever. It reminds me of the battle mode in the Mario Kart games, only way crazier. There are icons scattered all over each level to collect, which will give you different weapons. Some of them are for close quarters combat, and others are distant and even homing attacks. There's also special weapons you can find which do crazy stuff. And of course, these depend on which character you choose at the beginning of the game. Other icons can help fix your damage or block the abilities of certain enemy weapons as well as other defensive things. I'm using Sony's giant analog twin-stick controller to play this one, and let me tell you, it is absolutely insane. The left stick controls the vehicle movements and the buttons on it fire your weapons. The right stick controls the camera angle. I recommend not messing with the right stick, otherwise it can get confusing. One bad thing about this is that the joysticks have such a long throw from edge to edge that it makes moving the cars around kind of cumbersome. Playing with a regular-ass DualShock controller provides a much more enjoyable and intuitive experience, so I just recommend using one of those. Control issues aside, it's a pretty fun game. Each level has objectives like protect the Chinook helicopters. Some levels even have warps which toss you all the way to the other side of the stage. Or maybe an airplane will land on you as you're driving around, they sure as hell don't care. These stages can get pretty long as more and more enemies need to be defeated. The graphics are decent for their time, but there's a lot of polygon warping and plenty of clipping. And you can't see very far because the draw distance is extremely short. The music is pretty good with some rock tunes that are all Red Book audio. Looking back now, this would have been a great 8-player LAN game if the PS1 had an Ethernet jack, but it does have 2-player split screen. Vigilante 8 Second Offense came out the very next year. Yeah, I guess that's probably a better title than Vigilante 9. This one's mostly more of the same, and that's not a bad thing. Of course, there's new stages, cars, weapons, some new objectives to worry about, and crap like that. This one even has crocodiles that try to attack you. Though I guess it's probably a wimpy-ass alligator given that the stage takes place in Louisiana. The stages are all still fun to play on, but it feels like they didn't make many improvements to the game's engine overall. But why in the hell would you want to play the PlayStation or N64 version when you can play the Dreamcast version, which is way better? The gameplay is the same, but you get much improved visuals, usually running at 60 frames per second. This alone makes the game more enjoyable. There are some changes to the sequel over the original though. Now you have a machine gun that has unlimited ammo, but it's extremely weak. You also can no longer press backwards on the analog stick to move in reverse. Instead, you need to press down on the D-pad. So I just found myself using the D-pad to control everything since the analog stick didn't seem to offer much more precision. Still though, this is a much better game than the first one. There's a lot more variety. There's attachment icons you can get which can make you do things like hover around. These can be weird and they take a little bit of getting used to, but it's still fun to mess around with them. And hey, if you don't like them, you can always detach them immediately. I really like the music a lot more in this one as well. Seriously, be sure to check this one out, especially on the Dreamcast.
All right, here we are.
And Dave, did you like Vigilante 8 better than Twisted Metal, or do you like Twisted Metal better?
You know, Twisted Metal on the PS3 is awesome. I'm going to say I like that a lot better. I was very surprised at that game. I mean...
Well, it is a more successful franchise. However, Twisted Metal did not have a game on the Dreamcast.
Well, that's very true.
And that is a mark of shame for any franchise.
But obviously, that's a Sony property.
Yes, and let's just get back into it.
Here's the first Wipeout on the PlayStation developed by Psygnosis. I bought this game right away when it came out as it definitely looked interesting. And when I say interesting, I mean that I thought it was going to be like a powered up F-Zero on the PlayStation. Well, besides being a futuristic racer, it has really nothing to do with F-Zero at all. At the time, the racing was pretty intense, even though you rarely saw more than one other opponent on the track at a time. Since your opponents were so scarce, you'd always save your weapons for that one shot at slowing them down. Yeah, weapons do damage of course, but it takes multiple hits for you or your opponent to blow up, and even after that you're still in the race since you have a stock of lives. The game is tough though, it's really tough. The tracks seem narrow and your vehicle can be difficult to control. It feels very bouncy at all times, which isn't fun. Although it took a little while for the game to grow on me, it can stand on its own as a good combat racing game. Now here's Wipeout the Omega Collection for the PlayStation 4. This disc contains remasters of 3 titles: Wipeout 2048, which was a PS Vita title, Wipeout HD, which was a PSN title in North America but did see a physical release in Europe of course, and Wipeout Fury, which is just an expansion pack of Wipeout HD. Honestly, they could have done a lot more with this disc, but what's here is good. Probably the best thing about this disc is that if you have a PS4 Pro, then you're treated to playing these games in 4K at 60 frames per second, which really looks nice. If you have the lowly PS4 Amateur, then you get 1080p and 60 frames per second, which is still okay, I guess. Just kidding, it looks great either way. I've only ever played the Vita version of Wipeout 2048, and I really like that, so I was happy to see it here. Over time, the gameplay has been refined, and this definitely feels much more solid than the original. Gone are the days where you feel that your vehicle is bouncing all over the place. The gameplay is smooth, and the racing made my hands sweat with excitement as I started to make my way through the campaign modes. Just like all games in this series, the racing is fantastic. You're constantly trying to take out your enemies with a missile while navigating the tight corners on tracks that are beyond gorgeous to look at. I really do like the track design, and there's so much detail in the backgrounds that I'm always darting my eyes back and forth and trying to take it all in. If you have a big TV, you might wreck because your eyes were looking too far away from the track. So not only are there normal type races, but there's other types to keep you interested as well. Like the detonator mode where you have to blow up bombs and earn enough points for a gold medal. I love the colors in this level, and they just get more and more intense as you make progress. There's also the eliminator race where you score points by taking out your enemies. The only way to win this one is by reaching a certain point total for the race. So yeah, there's more than just simply racing, and the variety really makes me want to play more and more. And of course the music is a big factor in the enjoyment of this game. Since the game is from the Eurozone, what other music would be more fitting than a techno-trance soundtrack? I've got to say I'm not hating it. Actually, I really like the music here. I turn it up to level 10 when I'm playing and annoy the crap out of my non-European family. Oh well, they'll live. So yeah, if you got a PS4, then you need to have the Omega Collection in your life. It looks great, it plays great, and it sounds great. Oh, and the price is great as it's only $40 brand spanking new. Futuristic combat racing never felt so right as it does with the Wipeout series.
Let's check out Carnage Rally for the Game Boy Advance. This one was released by Jalico in 2001 and it's an overhead racer. It's pretty simple, you just need to rank as high as you can each race to finish first in the season. There's a bunch of different tracks and pretty much all of them are really fun to race on. Actually, this game as a whole is much better than you might think. Yes, so you have two weapons you can use, a forward-firing missile and a mine you drop behind you. These can give you the advantage you need to get ahead. But use your weapons wisely as they are not free. If you use them, you'll have to buy new ones to replace them in each race as there are no free restocks here. But sometimes there are missile icons on the track that you can collect to get a free one. Also on the track are coins for money and turbo boost icons. These fill up a gauge in the upper left and you can use it whenever your heart desires, and that's cool. During the first season, your opponents won't attack you very much, but starting with Season 2, they sure as hell will. You also got to keep an eye on your health bar, also located in the upper left. Anything below 100% means that you are damaged. Again, no free fixes here and you'll have to pay to fix your vehicle between rounds. But there are wrench icons scattered about each area which can repair some of your battle damage. Also between rounds, you can upgrade your vehicle's engine and tires for faster speed and better grip. And take it from Uncle Joe, be sure to do this as soon as you can, because otherwise it gets tough really fast if you don't. Always listen to your creepy uncle. Actually, that's probably not very good advice, is it? Oh well. You can also place bets before each race to get extra money. This pays 2 to 1, and it's a good way to get more if you feel confident of coming in first in the race. The graphics are pretty good, with lots of detail on the tracks, parallax scrolling, and even some 3D polygons to help give the game some more depth. The music is great too. It took me about 10, maybe 12 seconds to recognize it as being done by Jake Kaufman. His style is unmistakable. Unmistakably good, that is. There's also tons of music tracks in here, so even if you're a horrible human being and don't like Jake's music, at least it's not repetitive. Okay, we've got to talk about this box. It's absolutely amazing. For some reason, Jalico wanted this dude on there with his orange shirt and photoshopped blue hair and eyebrows. Say what you will about it, but it really does make the game stand out. However, the game offers a character select, and I was really pissed off when I couldn't select this dude to play as. I mean, the second you see the box, this guy becomes your hero. And I want to play as my hero. Maybe he's the final boss or something. But when it comes down to it, this is a good-looking, great-sounding, well-playing game for your Game Boy Advance.
Here's Rock and Roll Racing for the Super Nintendo, released in 1993 by Silicon and Synapse. It's the ultimate in car combat racing for the 16-bit era. The game plays on isometric racetracks that are scattered all throughout the galaxy. You can pick from one of 6 either human or alien drivers, and each one has its own boost in stats right off the bat, like +1 cornering or +1 acceleration and stuff like that. In a one-player game, you race against 3 other racers in an 8-race tournament. The goal is to get enough points to advance a level. Winning gives you 400 points, and finishing in second and third gives you fewer. Once you have enough points, you can advance from the B division to the A division. After you have enough points to advance from the A division, you move on to the next planet for a nice change of view. It's typically not tough to earn enough points in the 8 races to advance. If you don't earn enough points, you have to race the whole division over again until you get the points needed. And you know what? That's not a bad thing, since the game is really fun to play. You also earn money while you're racing. This can be spent in the shop to upgrade your car for things like more defense, a faster engine, and of course the ability to fire more shots at your enemies. Starting off sucks since you only get one shot. At the end of each lap, your abilities are reset, but still, one shot? Needless to say, you'll probably spend more money upping the number of shots you can take per lap. Everything you can upgrade tops out at 7. 7 shots per lap at taking out your enemies is pretty good and should do the trick. So how's the racing? Well, it's great. There's tons of different track designs that are all fun to race on, and each one consists of 4 laps. Your car controls very well, and you can even use the shoulder buttons to turn left and right if you want to. Or you can use them with the D-pad to make a very sharp turn. The tracks are littered with icons. These range from armor power-ups to money to bombs that'll damage your vehicle. They don't reappear after each lap, so collect those money and armor icons as quick as you can and leave the bomb ones for your opponents. You can also drop spikes on the tracks that'll damage the steering of whoever runs over it. And of course there's slime and water spills that'll mess with your car. Luckily your car can jump over these if you're quick enough. Oh, and yes, you can only jump once per lap until you upgrade that ability. So yeah, this is Rock and Roll Racing, which means it should have a kick-ass soundtrack, right? Well, yes it does, my friends. There's instrumental tracks of your favorite metal songs from the 80s like Bad to the Bone from George Thorogood or Paranoid from Black Sabbath, just to name a few of the 5 songs. With only 5 tunes, you'd think the soundtrack would get dull pretty quickly. Well, it doesn't for some reason, and I really do enjoy it. The announcer is also cool and strangely enough not very annoying. This also came out on the Genesis, and I've got to say it's definitely the inferior version. Firstly, the Genesis version is zoomed out a bit more because of the higher resolution. That's not a big deal, but the audio is where the Genesis lacks. The music doesn't sound as rich in quality as the Super Nintendo version. It has that Western-developed Genesis twang that sometimes is kind of annoying. The Genesis also has Larry Supermouth Huffman as the announcer, and it actually sounds good. I can hardly believe the clarity of his voice.
Viper is about to blow!
But the problem here is that the music has to pause so he can speak. It happens so often that it gets very annoying very quickly.
Rip is about to blow! Viper jams into first!
And the last change that I noticed is when you get the cutscene of your ship moving from one planet to the next. In the Super Nintendo version, the planet rotates and scales away using its amazing Mode 7 technology as your ship leaves, and when the new planet comes into view, it scales in. The Genesis version just has a stationary planet that just sits there looking stupid and not special in any way whatsoever. How boring. If you're gonna get this awesome combat racer, then get the Super Nintendo version with the better music and the mind-blowing Mode 7. But if you only have a Genesis, it's still really fun and you shouldn't pass it up if you see it.
About to blow!
All right, and there you go. Car combat, vehicular combat, whatever you want to call it. Those are a few of the games in this very, very full genre.
Yeah, very full. We might actually have to make a part 2. Nah, just kidding. But they were fun. I actually had a lot of fun with Twisted Metal, of course, like we said. And Rock and Roll Racing, that's awesome to go back and play that game. It was so fun.
Dave, Do you enjoy Radical Psycho Machine Racing on the Super Nintendo?
Oh, God, I don't know. Have I heard of that? I'm going to have to take this home and try it out.
Oh, you do that. You do that.
Okay.
Oh, it's fantastic. You'll love it.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, what are some of your favorite vehicular combat games? Let us know. And in the meantime, thank you for watching GameSack.
I can't believe Joe just let me take this! Alright, RPM Racing, this is gonna be radical! Yeah. Oh my God, this game is bland. Ugh, God, that sounds horrible. Oh, this plays horribly. Is my controller plugged in? I'll show him. Joe?
Oh, hi, Dave. Did you enjoy the game? Apparently not.